Isabel of France was married to King Richard II on November 1st, 1396. Draped in gold, dwarfed by the splendor around her, she stood silently as the Archbishop of Canterbury placed a ring on her finger. She was declared Queen of England at 6 years old, without understanding what that meant. But why was a 6-year-old girl married to the King of England? To answer that question, we have to start at the beginning. Isabel of France was born in the Louvre Palace, the daughter of King Charles of France. She came into a kingdom besieged by political instability, civil unrest, and a monarchy on the verge of collapse. Her father suffered from terrifying episodes of mental illness. He would forget his family, claim he was made of glass, and flee through the palace in delusional fear. During his madness, France was ruled by regents, whose power struggles split the court between the Armagnacs and Burgundians. Isabel's mother, Isabeau of Bavaria, took advantage of the king's illness, accruing power and wealth. Chroniclers accused her of neglecting her children and keeping lovers. For her, Isabel and her sisters were political assets, tools for forging alliances through marriage. But what was the reason for this horrible act? To understand that, we have to dive even deeper into the politics of France. By 1396, France remained embroiled in the 100 Years' War with England. King Richard II of England, grieving the death of his first wife, Anne of Bohemia, and beset by internal rebellion, sought peace and a new marriage. The French court saw an opportunity. Isabel, just 6 years old at the time, was offered to Richard along with a massive dowry of £800,000 in exchange for a 28-year truce. English negotiators expressed concern about her extreme youth, but Richard, desperate for French support, agreed. The arrangement was purely diplomatic. Negotiations treated the child like a commodity. Her age, innocence, and fear were brushed aside in favor of political convenience. In October 1396, Isabel was officially promised to Richard. She left France with a grand entourage, bringing only a few toys, her pet dog, and her favorite dolls. Though celebrated across England on her journey, the child cried, often confused and overwhelmed by the pomp. On November 1st, 1396, at St. Paul's Cathedral, Isabel was married to Richard. Though the marriage was never consummated, Isabel was treated with respect. The king provided her with tutors, French servants, and a private household. She lived in dignity at Westminster Palace and was raised more like a daughter than a wife. But Isabel's peace ended in 1399 when Richard was deposed by Henry Bolingbroke, who became Henry IV. Richard died in captivity shortly after, likely murdered by his political opponents. At just 10 years old, Isabel became a royal widow, but the real disaster was yet to strike. With no heirs and a spent dowry, her political value plummeted. Henry chose to keep her in England as a noble prisoner, hoping to use her in future diplomacy. She was held in luxurious confinement at Havering Palace. Isabel, now maturing, began to write desperate letters to her family in France. Here is a quote from one of her letters.
I write to you in tears, for I am kept here like a prisoner, far from all I love, without hope of return.
Her father, in a rare lucid episode, demanded her release. After protracted negotiations, she was finally returned to France in 1401 at age 12, but the return was not joyous. France was still divided. The child who had left at 6 came back as a somber adolescent, shaped by grief, captivity, and the bitter knowledge of being used. And even after returning to her home country, Isabel was once again used for political reasons. In 1406, Isabel was married again, now at the age of 17 this time, to Charles of Orleans, a cultured and sensitive nobleman known for his poetry. Though arranged, this marriage offered what her first never could: love. Isabel and Charles shared a deep emotional connection. They found joy in literature and mutual respect. For a short while, she lived not as a queen or political tool, but as a wife, a woman, and a human being. But fate intervened again in Isabel's life. In 1409, just 3 years into their marriage, Isabel died from postpartum complications at only 19 years old. Her passing was quiet, almost forgotten, so unlike the lavish ceremony that had once made her a queen at 6. Charles would go on to suffer his own tragedy. He was captured by the English at the Battle of Agincourt in 1415 and held in captivity for 25 years. But his beloved Isabel did not live to see it. Isabel's life had never truly belonged to her. Sacrificed at 6 for diplomacy, widowed at 10, imprisoned at 12, married again at 17, Isabel's story was one of decisions made by others. She fulfilled every role demanded of her, queen, wife, symbol of peace. But she was never given the chance to simply live as herself. She never ruled, never chose, and never lived free of obligation. She fulfilled the political roles demanded of her queen, wife, political tool, but was never given space to be simply the little girl she was. Now tell me, what do you think of Isabella of France? Write it in the comments.